everyone, and welcome to the Woman's Cave. Yeah, it is Women's Cave. I was about to say the Ladies' Tales. Oh wait, it should be a Ladies' Tales. It really should be a Ladies' Tale podcast. I need to like figure out beforehand. I should just write them down, Ladies' Tales. Because when Jade does it and she invites people, she goes, "This is for Ladies' Tales. This is for the writers' class. This is for this and this." And when I do it, I'm like, I'll figure it out when I see the person. Let's see the energy. And then yeah, I forget which one I'm doing. Not important. I'm Wilona, by the way, and I am missing Jade. I think she might join us later on. And I also want everyone out there to know that if you recognize that I look like a raccoon with no lipstick today, I thoroughly have an explanation for this. I feel horrible.
You look gorgeous.
Oh, see, now our guest is really sweet. Is that something you learn in LA, just to be really nice to people? Anyway. So I'm going to quickly go through what the information that y'all need to know, that you can follow the ladies on andwethought.com, and that we have some books out, and I thought divorce was bad, boom, and I thought being grown up was easy. If Only I Were Me, a memoir in verse. I think those are all three of our audiobooks, and then of course I have 3 audiobooks out of my own. But if you want to see everything, including the entire collection, you can go to andwethought.com. I think Jade might be making a late appearance, but before she does, I'm going to go ahead and say, guess would you like to? You're not here to hear more about us. Oh, I forgot. If you want to see this abbreviated, you can go to andithoughladies.com. Now it's time to introduce the guest, because you're not here to hear about me. You're here to hear about our wonderful guest. Wonderful guest, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm Ann Thompson, and I am, I guess my title is editor-at-large at Indiewire. I write a lot about movies and entertainment and TV and awards. Well, hello, Jade.
Hello, you. I'm sorry, I'm late.
And I'm, I've just been covering movies. I'm a huge cinephile, and I've been covering movies my whole life. And I'm happy. I listen to your podcast. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, I would. Thank you for listening to our podcast, first of all, I have to say that. And then I'd like to apologize for the non-professionalism, but that's okay.
Yeah.
We like it that way.
We like it that way. We do. So you fell in love with movies at an early age?
Yeah, I grew up in New York City, in Manhattan, and I had a single father, and he used movies as a babysitter, and we would go to the movies all the time, from the Marx Brothers to Audie Murphy Westerns to, he had a big laugh, and we just loved going to the movies. And there were all these great theaters back then. They don't, half of them don't exist anymore. And the very first time I went to a first run movie was A Hard Day's Night in Midtown Manhattan, the Beatles.
Wow.
Okay, first of all, I just want to say, I think it's amazing that there's someone else out there who watches second run movies. Because it's so,
well, we were on the Upper West Side, man, so, we got the second run. But, there was the Riverside and the Riviera and the Thalia and the New Yorker. There was even something called the Nemo once, which is where I saw Lawrence of Arabia. So that's the kind of weird brain I have, that I can remember where I saw every movie, And then I went and, ran the Film Society in college and, ordered 16 millimeter prints from various catalogs. I wound the projector, and had nightmares that it was going to come unwound, and spill out on the floor. That kind of thing. That was, and then I went to NYU and studied cinema studies there. And learned how to be more of a critic type.
Okay, first of all, I'm gonna say I don't meet many people who went to school and were like, I want to do cinema studies, and then they officially work in what they wanted to do. So I'm like,
well, maybe it's probably just hard work.
Yeah, it probably is, and a true love for it.
If I had to do it over again, I would have had a much more proper 100% academic education and hit the movies later. But that was my enthusiasm at the time. Better to know about real stuff than movies, in my opinion.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask you why.
Yeah. Because my brain is full of trivia. It's just full of facts and figures and box office and who starred in what. And I remember it, I retain it. It's terrible. I would rather have studied philosophy and religion and other things like that.
I mean, if you look at it this way, it feels like you have the religion of the philosophical movie.
Right. Absolutely. And our co-host is here, which is amazing. Like, I'm telling you, y'all, we were doing this today, which like yeah, but it just feels like you did do cinema, but it's still wonderful. Like, you learn a lot in movies. Some of it's made up, like in books, right? Some of it's made up, but some things are actually real things, and you get to see how people react.
That's very true. And I actually feel a great loss right now because of the pandemic and all the theaters that have been closed, and the risk of a lot of the theaters closing more that we predicted, unfortunately, at the beginning of the pandemic. Because when you see movies in a theater with a group of people and you're all engaged in that sole purpose, and your life evaporates and disappears, and you're concentrated on this one thing, and it's so powerful. And so it means a lot, I think, that people can ingest and identify and empathize with other people's lives, and that is the power of movies, and messages can be brought through.
Absolutely. And absolutely, like when Winona and I are super tired, right? We would just one day we would look at each other and we're like, we're going to a matinee. We don't even know, like a lot of times we don't even know what's out, but we're going, because it's just that
it's a vacation.
It's like a vacation. Like for 2 hours, you have to put your phone on mute. You have to put it away. And when you're just telling everyone, hey, I'm going to a movie, nobody bothers you because they know that you're in the movie.
And you can't look at your cell phone in right. theory.
In theory, but I like literally put it in the bottom of my purse because I text the people that I need to know, like, hey, I'm in a movie. Like if it's really bad, like call me 5 times in a row and I will feel the vibration and I'll know leave. But nobody ever does that. So thank goodness that's never happened.
Speaking of vacation, I'm up in Maine. That's why I'm in this weird looking bedroom. This isn't my house.
I thought it was super cool. I was like, this is exactly movie. Like, I get it.
Okay, this is Tanya Todd. She is our house cinephile. She actually has a website where she calls herself a cinephile. So we thought a cinephile should probably ask questions to a cinephile because we write books, as you know.
I write books too.
I mean, yes, absolutely. But you're so much more talented. You write screenplays and all the other things.
Exactly.
Well, since we're talking books, and you wrote a book, will you tell us about it?
Oh, thank you for mentioning it. I wrote it back in 2000 and it was published in 2014, and it was about the year 2012. It was called The $11 Billion Year. Those were the days. That's never going to happen again. That was the box office for that year and for the whole world. And it was really an incredible, it was probably, you edit this thing, right? Do you edit this thing?
Hold on.
Wow, that's really something that I'm losing my own sense of what the box office is, because it's it's crazy. We don't know what it is anymore.
I mean, it's COVID, and so like 1 year ran into the next year. It just is.
So it was about the most peak year at the box office. It did go past that at one point, but it was about from Sundance to the Oscars. And it was about the way that the movies are changing, and it was about the shift that has occurred now, and it took you through the whole year, and it still applies, but it is a little bit in the rear view now. And it was all about how the theaters were in trouble, and how the windows were in trouble, and Netflix was taking over, and it was about a lot of those. But it was about going to Cannes and going to CinemaCon, and that's over. CinemaCon, maybe Cannes will happen this year, and it was about how the whole system works, chapter by chapter, run through one actual year.
Which is strange because
it's a big movie that year.
I'm the type of person who loves going to watch movies in the theater. Like, I think there's a loss when I suppose there are some movies that if they're very quiet movies, you don't need to see it in the theater. But I think you lose something in the experience if you're not in the theater watching it. But, we weren't really able to do that over the last year. And we recently saw the closure of like ArcLight Cinema in LA, which is tragic for many movie lovers. And I'm not even in LA, and it hurt me. You mentioned that theaters were in trouble when you were writing your book. How do you think things are, is there any hope for movie theaters to survive now?
I'm worried about it. I'm really worried about it because it's a combination of there was a period of time when the theaters and the studios remember, the studios used to own the movie theaters, and then they had to give them up because of the consent decrees in 1948. And then the movie theaters became their own business, and they had boards of directors and the big chains. We're really talking about the big chains and then the little tiny art houses. And every city's different. Every city has a different combination of assets in terms of theaters, but a lot of them are going to go away. All the ones that don't work, all the weakest ones. And then there's going to be real attrition. And the movie studios are not invested now as much in the business of the theaters, and they're going to be favoring what Wall Street likes. What does Wall Street like? Wall Street likes streaming. They're forgiving Disney. Disney's been losing incredible amounts of money, but they made a big deal out of Disney Plus, and that played on Wall Street. And so they're all in competition now, the studio streaming sites that are trying to catch up to Netflix. So you have Disney Plus and HBO Max, competing. And so they're taking big movies that would ordinarily go to the theaters and putting them right on streaming. Pixar movies are going straight onto streaming. And nobody's happy about that at Pixar. So eventually they're going to do the math, and the biggest budget movies are going to go out in theaters, and there's different deals with each of the different studios, with each of the different movie chains for different periods of time that are exclusive, but it has nothing to do with the old 90-day window. That is gone forever. And it's looking like, now that they're able to do the math and do the experiments on that the theaters were preventing them from doing for a long time, the studios are figuring out exactly what they can make in, premium VOD versus theaters versus streaming, and how it all plays out. And it's good for the studios to have all these different options. The theaters have no options except what the studios feed them. They will exist, but it's probably the biggest possible movies. I saw, for example, last night, Woman in the Window on Netflix, right? This was a movie that was supposedly originally at Fox, and then it was sold and Disney was supposed to do it. Amy Adams, Gary Oldman, the new hot ticket right now, Wyatt Russell, very hot ticket. But the child of Goldie and Kurt
Russell.
Yeah. But that movie ended up being sold to Netflix. And so the studios have figured out, take the money and run, man. Don't bother putting those movies that aren't going to get good reviews, that aren't going to do well in theaters. There's no reason to do that anymore. It's just going to be the big tent poles now. And then
I think that's what happened with Wonder Woman. It's like they knew that people were going to trash it when it came out, so they just released it to streaming because it was ready to go before the pandemic, and they still didn't put it out. And then it was not a good movie.
No.
Which is the nicest way I can say it.
Many sequels are. Did you guys like Wonder Woman? The sequel?
I did.
The sequel?
I really did. Well, understand. I think that we are really forgiving of art, right? Because we would hope that people, when they read our pop poetry, are forgiving, right? So in that way, we are forgiving of art. We're like, I can see where they were trying to go with it, so I'm with it. I mean, and besides, the movie's supposed to make you use your imagination. Sometimes they get it right. You don't have to imagine anything. Sometimes you do.
Yeah.
Because you're like, yo, they missed a huge
Yes,
scene.
it was
That
like
amazing there. Let's just add that scene in mentally.
I can't even
Keep
tell
going.
you how many authors I read like that. I'm like, the first book was so promising, and then the second book, like I read until like the fifth book, and if you really still haven't come in, I might still get it from the library and see.
You are very forgiving. My time is precious.
Because
you know who I liked? I liked Pedro Pascal. That was the best thing about
he
that
was
movie.
He's an excellent performer. I won't fault the performance, but the plot and the effects and the choices that were made, just Very questionable. Like, hey, by the way, it's 4th of July. We didn't mention it the entire time, and we're in Washington, D.C. It's not actually a big holiday there. So, you know, it makes sense that you wouldn't have noticed any decorations or people selling fireworks until they are in the sky. Okay.
You see why we have Tanya come in on this one, right? Because
Right.
we're sitting here like, I didn't see that at all. I was like, oh, it's 4th of July in DC. Yeah, I tried to forget it too because the traffic is horrible. Absolutely. Oh my goodness, that's exactly what we
Right?
did.
I was like, I try to forget it every year. I'd be
After
like,
they stole a plane that has been sitting for years that couldn't possibly fly. You're
I'm
telling me
impressed
you
that all of you
you know what?
remember all these details, because I can tell you that's the kind of movie that flew right out the back of my head after I saw
Well,
it.
I was watching it because I was going to be on a show discussing it, so I had to commit these sins to memory, and now I cannot unsee them, you know?
But I pride myself. One of the lucky things about my job is that I can sort of just decide what I'm going to see, what I'm going to cover, what I want to. I'm the awards
I was
person.
going to ask you that. Like,
I
what,
get
how
to
do you
do the
decide
awards
what you're going to
quality
cover?
stuff. That sort of dictates a
Yeah.
lot of what I do. So that when it comes time for Oscar time, which, do you guys care about the Oscars, you three?
Very much. I watch all of the Oscar nominated movies every year. This year it was tragic because I couldn't watch them in the theater, but I found a way to
Yeah.
watch every one.
How about you guys?
We watch because we know people who work the Oscars, so we'll watch.
well,
But
I
besides
call
that,
people. Like, I know the people that watch the movies that they're like, hey, I watch all of them, and I'm like, which are the best ones? Okay, I'm gonna watch those ones. All right.
That's the good way to
Cool.
go. That's actually very smart, because my goal in life is to avoid watching the worst movies. That is my goal. To skip the stuff that I know I'm going to be miserable at.
So you
know.
didn't watch Mortal Kombat?
No, I saw the trailer. The trailer told me everything I needed to know.
Did you
No,
play the game?
No, I'm not a.
Then there was no reason
gamer.
for you to watch the
No,
movie.
no. Yeah, what have I ever done? I play Beatles Rock Band. That's what I play.
You know what? That
on my
sounds really fun.
And the PS3 is in the mail to get repaired because it doesn't work anymore, and I'm not
no.
buying a new one. No,
You wore it out.
I play DVDs on it. But so no, I worry about the Oscars because I've been spending so much of my adult life paying attention, and since I was a kid paying attention to it, and B, because I just worry that a lot of people don't care about it anymore, the way that they don't care about movies anymore.
It's the only show that I watch live. It's the only show that I watch when it comes out.
It was
don't
kind
even
of
watch the
not the
Super Bowl
best
anymore.
one this time.
You know what? It didn't take too long. I didn't have to sit through bad skits. They delivered what they said they were going to deliver, which is just giving the awards. I don't need it to be super entertaining. I want to know who won and just a little bit of information about each of those things. So they gave me what I
Then you
needed.
were Soderbergh's target audience. Good job.
I don't need the filler. You know what I mean? Just give me.
Here's what I will predict for next year. For next year, they're going to go all the way the other way.
It will be because of all the criticism.
Oh yeah, it'll be the most ABC, totally, mainstream friendly.
You think they'll have a host?
And they'll do it. They'll have a comedian. They'll do the whole thing the way they used to do it. Whatever this was an aberration that will never be repeated.
Considering what they had to deal with and trying to bring something live, something in person in the tail of the pandemic, I can't be too critical when their hands were tied in a lot of areas.
I agree with that. I think they delivered. They actually delivered a show.
And you see,
right, they delivered a show.
Those arts, we can't be too critical because of what they had.
Okay, but that's a live performance. I'm going to be a lot less critical about a live performance than something where they spent millions and had editors and over a year of time to fix it, and it still didn't produce.
I was going to say Woman in the Window fits that description. When is this airing? I think there's an embargo.
Oh, so I would like to ask, you said you fell in love with movies like The Witch Is Born. Arabia, and where do you feel we are now compared to like the golden days?
Ah.
I think that's the tail end of the golden era, isn't it? Lawrence of
Golden-
Arabia?
Absolutely, absolutely. The 60s
And I
were
like it 'cause I-
awesome.
cool.
And then the 70s were awesome. Also, the reaction to what was before, when it was really innovative and studios were open to trying all sorts of new ideas. Well, we're kind of heading toward tentpole Marvel, Star Wars, DC all the way, and the occasional movie that turns out so well that they're willing to take it out in hopes of getting Oscars. Oscars are still a way to get things into theaters, because you could see that the movies that didn't play in theaters during the pandemic didn't have any profile, didn't have any branding, didn't have any identification. People didn't know what they were. And that's why it's so important to put movies in theaters and get people to, even Netflix took this Army of Darkness thing this weekend, this coming weekend. It's going out in the widest release that Netflix has ever had. And they know that if it gets out there and lots of bros go to see this thing, that they're going to come back and talk about it and get people to watch it on Netflix. That's all they care about is eyeballs. They think theaters are a way in to eyeballs, and that's why they're pushing it in theaters this way. It's sort of ironic.
It really is.
Thank you for explaining that, because I read a long time ago that Netflix was like, oh, we're going into theaters. And I was like, why would you go into theaters when you just have like, I mean, you're the ace, you're the top.
You're the person.
Of like the streaming right now, and everybody else is in war, and you're like, hey, I raised it free. But now that explains that completely, and so well. And I want to say one more thing. This is my bragging moment because I know something about Hollywood.
Yay! Something. Let's celebrate that.
So I sincerely agree with. I really do think that Marvel and DC, which I'm very happy, will just probably be it for theaters, because you have to see those in theaters. I mean, no matter how good you are at home, it's not as good as theaters. And then the prestige projects, which I learned from reading a book, because studios will have to invest lightly in prestige projects if they believe that it will get an Oscar. That's my whole, I know something about Hollywood spiel. Now let's go back to you and ask you a real question.
Tanya? Real question.
Well, I have a fun question. I was hoping that you would give us recommendations for hidden gems that maybe no one buzzed about last year.
Hidden gems that no one buzzed about last year. I loved the Rada Blank movie, the 40-year-old version.
Okay.
Did you guys ever interview her?
No.
She is hilarious. And it's an unusual movie because she was basically doing a Woody Allen in the sense that she was doing a New York black and white semi-autobiographical movie starring herself as a version of herself. And it was funny, okay? That in that sense, it was like a Woody Allen comedy, but it was also incredibly critical of the way that a woman of a certain age and a certain color is treated in the movie business and the theater business, and she and the music business. She does all those things. She raps, she writes plays, and she writes screenplays. And I just cannot wait to see what she does in the future. Now that she's been, and Lena Waithe is the one who helped her to get that movie made and get it made at Netflix. Netflix allows a lot of cool things to get made that otherwise you would never ever see. What else would be a hidden gem? That's the kind of movie that did get some applause, but it didn't make it all the way to the Oscars. I'm gonna say, because I loved a lot of the big movies that actually got into the contention at the end. I'll just stick with that for now.
Okay. Well, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask you to share your thoughts on what's going on with the Hollywood Foreign Press Association and
yeah.
Globes right now.
That I have been reporting ad nauseum because there's new news every single day. It's a fascinating phenomenon, actually. What it reveals is that you can't get away with murder inevitably And that even in Hollywood, even with something that was making so much money for so many people, the fact that it was rotten at the core, which we all knew, it's not like we didn't know it. It's so interesting. It's like Scott Rudin or Harvey Weinstein. It's like everyone knew most of it. They didn't know all of it. I mean, I knew that Harvey was a bad guy and I didn't like him and I didn't trust him. And I knew that he used power in a sort of thug-like, hideous way, and that he ran a toxic work environment. But I didn't know the extent of his sexual assaults and serial predation and crimes. A lot of people didn't realize how bad he was. Scott Rudin, everybody knew he ran a toxic work environment and treated people like shit all the time, you know? But he had such good taste that they let him get away with it because he made really good movies and really good Broadway shows, and he made people money. But eventually he got called on it. And journalism is what's getting all of this stuff across. The LA Times did a story on the Hollywood Foreign Press, 87 people who have been corrupt and perhaps lacking a real, many of them real credentials to be in any position to be choosing winners of awards. But they did it for a really long time and they made a lot of money, and everybody thought they would continue to do it, that they were a necessary and valued part of the awards apparatus. And guess what? NBC canceled the Golden Globes. And it's also the publicists and the talent that ended up rising up against, because they hated the questions that they would ask. They were sexist and misogynist and racist. They were so racist. We didn't know this guy, Phil Burke from South Africa, who was there, 80 something years old, typical of the Hollywood Foreign Press, really old and set in his ways, old white guy who called the Time's Up movement racist. I mean, Black Lives Matter, racist. He is so, they had to kick him out, right? But he ran the organization. He was the president for 8 different times. You know, that's the kind of thing that, and so Scarlett Johansson gets up and says, I hated being asked these sexist questions by this group. So all the thing is that I just assumed that everybody knew these people, that they went to their press conferences, that they you know, answered their questions for all these years, and that there was some kind of strange affection, you know, that people wanted to get their awards. I didn't realize how much the people who were part of the process were resenting and disliking and hating what they were doing. They all knew them. Everyone knew them very personally. The people in the Hollywood Foreign Press are so shocked because they believed that these people were their friends and that they were being treated and wined and dined and valued, and that they deserved to be valued. And I think it's a great shock to them that in fact, maybe they did not deserve that treatment.
You could wake up and be like, NBC canceled the Golden Globes. You're like, what? I read that wrong. But yeah, that heading 4 times. And I was like, no, it does say canceled. Oh, wow.
Because it took a while for them to figure out that all these people telling them they had to change, that they actually had to completely throw out the old playbook and add members and not protect themselves all the time and keep all the money, you know, that they had to become legitimate. And I think what everyone figured out was that it was impossible for them to become legitimate. That it was like asking a toad to turn into a princess overnight. You know, they just weren't gonna, or a prince. They weren't gonna be able to do that, to be kissable by the princess. Not gonna happen.
Wow. So what does it feel like to write about films? Because you don't have like 60 pages that you get to write about a film. So how do you make it short and concise and readable?
It helps if you know that you'll get fired if you don't. You better deliver the goods. Our job is to be now look, the serious secret of whatever longevity I have is that I love my job and I love movies and I care about them and I still get excited about them and I still fret and worry and beat myself up when I don't do what I consider to be a good job. This is my neurosis, and it is in fact, a very anxiety producing kind of gig, because you're competing with others and you have to do it better than everyone else. You gotta deliver the goods, and not make mistakes. We all do make some mistakes, but luckily when you're online, you can fix them right away and edit them and move on. But I definitely, at the beginning, I used to write for places that were every 2 months or every month or every week or every day. And now it's just, constant every minute, you're just on.
Yeah, I was going to ask about your writing process, because it seems like you're a very fast writer, but
I'm
what
not
happens
as fast as the younger people at Indiewire. They're much faster than I am, and they consider me to be slow.
Oh,
Compared
really?
to someone who works for a newspaper or a magazine, I'm fast. But
okay, but you see certain online magazines and you can tell, oh, they just threw together some slop. They didn't even proofread it and they posted it. And it's in the exact same format as every other article that is posted on this site, where they have this formula of don't talk about what the headline says until you get to this spot right here, which is very frustrating because that's why you clicked it. And so I have this habit of just skipping those.
Is that why they do that? That's really, I hate that.
I don't know. It's very
It's what
annoying.
I read in the middle of the night.
Yeah, same. But your writing isn't like that. And you don't go through and see typo after typo, or this person never knew how to use this word. It's not a typo. They just don't know what this word means, and somehow they have a job writing, which is very frustrating to other writers. You seem to be able to produce content that is readable and polished at a quick pace.
Yeah, thank you for your kind words. I've been doing it a long time. And you know what's great about writing? It's something you can improve on. You can get better. And I have never believed that I've done as good a job as I could. But at some point you have a deadline and you have to hand it in. And then Indiewire, believe it or not, we have editors. We do. We actually read everything and go over everything. There are rush news stories that go up very quickly that someone looks at afterwards. Speed is essential with the breaking news stuff. And we also have, I have the luxury. There's people at Indiewire who are on the news beat, and there are critics, and then there are reporters, which is more what I am. And because I do business stuff too. And I get to weigh in at a slightly slower pace than everybody else, which gives me time to polish it a little bit and give it some context, give it some weight, give it some, this is why. That's what I love. I love the psychology of these crazy people who make all this art, and I get accused. Like I got to interview Mads Mikkelsen the other day. What's wrong with this job?
That's amazing. I want to ask your best interview ever, but I know that's inappropriate.
What we're gonna ask is, so when you were going to school to be a critic of cinema, did you ever really think that you were going to have to write at this speed?
No. It would have been beyond my wildest dreams. The good news is that I adapted to the internet early. I figured it out. I saw it for whatever reason. I'm there's always somebody smarter than you, and most of the people you're interviewing are smarter than you. But I saw that I got for some reason, and I was able to adapt to it really ahead of a lot of my friends and colleagues and people that I knew. And I don't know why I got it, but I did. And it has to do, I think, with the fact that I do better fast than slow. If I get worried about it and hung up on it and thinking about how I'm being exposed to the world, the ultimate imposter, it hurts me. I'm actually better at going fast and having to get it out right away and it's done. And then I move on to the next thing. And multitasking is something else too. You're holding several stories in your head at once. And in award season, you're holding all those stories. You're constantly adding knowledge to each thing that you're tracking and paying attention to, and you have to hang on to it. I don't hang on to it as well as I used to. Luckily, there's IMDb. Thank you very much.
I love it. I love it so much. I just want to end it right there. Like, that sounds wonderful. So what are some tips that you would give new people that want to be film critics, that love movies, want to do what you do? What are like the 3 tips that you would give them?
Go with your bliss. I believe that. I do. If you love something, pursue it. And write and write and write and write and write, because the more you do it, the better you will be. I am not of the school that throwing your opinions around you have to have some authority behind it. You have to have some backup. You have to have some argument, reason. I really do rely on reporting a lot, and then I add my wisdom to it just from having observed for so long. So if you're young and you're moving into writing, get a gig and learn it and try to make money from it. Film criticism is something I really value, but I don't know how much of a future there is for what we call film criticism. The world that exists today, and I think Tanya knows this better than anybody, is heading for television and series and streaming. And someone said this to me around the time of my book, actually, this guy named Sean Daniel, producer. He said, "Anne, don't you get it? Movies, television, it's all filmed entertainment." And it is. It's all mushed together now. It's all, one thing. And the 2-hour movie that I grew up with is sort of history. Really, I don't think it's going to continue to exist the way that we think of it. There will be some theaters that are showing 2-hour movies, but it's really another world now.
You make me so sad.
No, it's like I want to go to the theater.
Like, now I'm going to the theater just to buy popcorn and ice
It's
just to buy something, make sure the theater stays in business. Oh my goodness.
Tanya, one last question, because I know you have one.
I want to know what the best way is for viewers to support you.
I would say Indiewire has a ton of great content. And the reason I support and love and appreciate and feel very lucky to be there is that we're kind of curating, for the smart demo, if you like. There's so much, there's the trades, the Variety, the Hollywood Reporter, the all the deadlines and everything, but they have big pipelines of content that they're trying to get out to everybody in the industry. And I would say that Indiewire is playing to the consumer and to the real world, as well as the trade world. And that means that you're going to learn what you guys want to know, hopefully, which is what are the cool movies, the good movies, the movies worth seeing about, and we give it to you. So come to Indiewire, come to AK Stanwyck on Twitter, and I share a lot of what I'm learning every day on there. Maybe it's too much, maybe it's too weird, but I share it.
So I want to just piggyback really fast on something you just said. You share the cool content. What are some things that you're looking forward to this year? What are some movies you're looking forward to seeing and reviewing this year?
Well, I can't wait to see Leo DiCaprio and Martin Scorsese get back together with this Broken Flowers of the Silver Moon, or whatever the title of that is. I'm losing my brain. The David Gran book it's based on. He's the guy who did The Lost City of Z, which I read, which is an extraordinary book. So I cannot wait to see that. I want to see the Coen brother solo Joel Cohen, first time with Frances McDormand, the Oscar winner, doing Macbeth. That I got to see in black and white. And there was a story today that Apple picked that up for a hefty sum. So that's going to be on their award slate next year. There's a movie opening up Cannes called Annette that is Leos Carax and Adam Driver. It should be crazy wild. A musical. I can't wait. I've already seen In the Heights, so I can recommend that one wholeheartedly to everyone. Can't wait to see West Side Story. And if In the Heights turns out to be better than Steven Spielberg's movie, I will applaud it, but we shall see. Which I think I know that In the Heights is going to be more authentic than Steven Spielberg's movie, but I'm a big fan of musicals, so maybe he'll pull it out. And what else? That's a pretty good list for now.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your list and coming on today. Tell us one more time where people can follow you on Twitter.
I have the world's most common name, Ann Thompson. So I came up with my alter ego, beloved movie star Barbara Stanwyck's last name, and put my two initials in front of it. So that's AK Stanwyck on Twitter.
Fabulous. Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure.
Tanya, where can people find out more about you? And don't forget your IMDb.
I am across social media at Ms. Tanya Todd. My website is mstanyatodd.com. I'm on IMDb. Just search for Tanya Todd. And my website, or not my website, my podcast is the 52 Love Podcast on YouTube and on Spotify.
Thank you so much.
And don't forget to click our IMDb.
Yes.
Like we do every
Like we do.
get more work.
More work.
And
We love
therefore
it.
we can get closer to the crafty table.
Absolutely. Everyone's dreams coming true. Everyone. All right. And you can find out everything about your ladies on www.andwethought.com. While you're there, go to the ladies tab, go to the middle and see the charities that we proudly support. Maybe you can support them also. We thank you in advance for that. And if you want all of this just in a really condensed form, where do they go?
They go to www.and.thoughtladies.com.
Absolutely. Y'all remember, wisdom is all around you. If
You're open to finding it and accepting it. So peace and love, you guys. Well, no.
and Jade, bye-bye. Oh yeah, thanks for